Thank you very much for having me. I'm Anita Thaler. I'm a researcher at IFZ, which is an interdisciplinary research center for technology, work and culture in Graz, Austria. And I'm the head of a research area called Gender in Science and Technology. So that gives away what I'm doing. And I'm also head of a research group, which is called Queer STS, so Queer Science and Technology Studies. Yes, and I'm in this research field for 15 or so years. And my main emphasis lies on gender issues in science as an organizational topic. So to include gender equality as a structural change topic, but also gender in terms of a research category or a cross-cut issue in technology and technology design, technology development. So very interdisciplinary. So Femtech projects are a funding line from a research funding organization in Austria, FFG. And they invented this program, I think, more than 10 years ago. Yeah, even more than 10 years ago, to include gender in research and development, and especially in technology and innovation projects. And on the one hand, it is about reaching gender balanced teams, etc. So this is what you are mainly thinking of when you think about gender in technology, to get more women into technology. But this Femtech research project initiative aims at bringing gender as a topic into technology and innovation projects by thinking about how can gender have an influence in this research topic. And whenever there could be a gender question within the project, there is financing for it. So FFG is quite innovative with funding this for several years now. VITAPATCH, the project I'm talking about today, is one of those projects financed by the FFG Femtech research funding program. And I have been invited by colleagues from the Human Research Institute and Joanneum Research Institute, two Austrian research institutes dealing with the more technology side of issues. And they asked me whether I would join the project team. And they asked me already in the proposal stage. And I took a look at the proposal and found that there is quite a lot of gendered issues there. So I wrote with them on the proposal, and then we got the funding and we worked on the project as an interdisciplinary team. So I was on the project all the time from the beginning to the end, which was quite recently. So the project itself is, like the name says, about patches. So it is called VITAPATCH, and it is about a multifunctional data patch to monitor movements and vital signs. So it is basically covering all those quite neat things wearable technologies can do. So for instance, if you know fitness trackers, they can monitor your movements, they can monitor your vital signs, ECG for instance. But those fitness trackers, they have, or even your smartphone can do that nowadays. But those fitness trackers and smartphones, they are not very precise. So if you want to have precise information about your vital signs, you have to go to a doctor, to a hospital, and have, for instance, a 24 hours ECG to really know your vital signs over a longer period, and to combine it with movement to get feedback on if you are doing movement correctly, or if you are stressed out in certain situations, etc. And that with the accuracy of a doctor, let's say, then you would need a different technology. And we worked in the project team together with physicists, engineers, And they worked with piezoelectric crystals and put them on an ultra thin stretchable foil. And the idea was to send the signals to a smartphone app later on, and to be able to work with this patch technology for, I don't know, you could use it for fitness monitoring, or you could use it for medical purposes, as it is medically accurate. So in the beginning, it was just this foil technology, piezoelectric crystals, etc. And the gender dimension was to find out for which use case we could use the technology. And when I'm talking about use cases, this is also my thing. I'm working with a participatory approach. So I'm working with stakeholders and users from the very beginning. And this was quite new to the engineers I'm working with in this project, because they were used to work with users and stakeholders when the technology is so ready that they have something to work with and to try out. And my approach is different. I want to think about users as specific persons, and the feminist starting point is to think of users also as bodies, as different bodies, not necessarily in a binary, there are women and there are men and they are so different, but more there are different bodies with different needs out there. And some bodies have thicker skins, some have thinner skins. This is important for the foils, for the patches. It's not so much about if somebody is born as a woman or as a man, or identifies as a woman or as a man. This comes later on. This is important at a later stage when we're talking about how are we applying the use case in everyday lives of users, and how are they dealing with certain issues. But in the beginning, it was just about thinking about the different use cases and thinking about the different possibilities. And so my starting point was, we have to talk to a lot of stakeholders. That means to experts, and we talk to work psychologists, we talk to cardiologists, we talk to physical therapists, etc., and presented them the basic line of the technology and what we would like to achieve, and discussed with them the potential of such a technology, what they would think that their patients or their clients would like to have, etc. And then we in my team, I always worked in teams, so we made a gender workshop for the engineering colleagues, and then we made a use case scenario workshop. And in this use case scenario, we embedded all the information we got from the expert interviews and asked some critical questions. And the critical questions were along ethical dimensions, also legal dimensions, gender dimensions, etc. And with these questions, critical questions and discussions among the group, we decided on one specific use case. And so what we did is we configured the user as a specific somebody, and we did not think about the users as potentially everybody. So this is very important, because when you're talking about users and you're configuring the user as everybody out there, they are interchangeable, and they don't have no specific needs. They have no specific, they are too interchangeable, as I said. And when you do that, engineers and designers switch too often in some sort of I methodology, and they think about themselves as users and try out the technology within themselves. I was not successful with this one workshop, but I was very successful with my ongoing work with them over a period of, I think, 3.5 years. So it is not a singular workshop which is changing minds and changing habits. I mean, you can raise awareness with one workshop, and this is what we did. We raised awareness that gender is not only a binary category, that there is sex and there is gender, and we talked about intersectionality. That means that there are intersections of inequalities, which are sometimes very important. So sometimes it's not just about gender, but it's important to think about, for instance, gender and age. And if you're thinking about technology, which has to be used by older people, it is so very crucial and important to think about age also. I mean, this sounds so logical, but it is important in the day-to-day engineering and designing process. And you have so many other interesting things when you're designing innovation and when you're thinking about new products and new developments, that you tend to forget some of those things. And that's why it's so important that there is somebody who is taking care of those issues all the time. This is a whole process. It is not just one intervention and then magically somebody has a different understanding. And that those colleagues even asked me in the first place was, for me, yeah, it was the sign that they are already ready to have a gendered innovation, as you call it, in place. And they really wanted to aim at that. They just didn't know how. And about the how, I was there and we worked continuously. What we found out in evaluation interviews, a colleague of us did with the gender team and also the engineering team, that our approach of, I would say, gender-sensitive technology research was very successful also for the engineers. They told me, or told the evaluator, that they are thinking about their actual users quite often now, also in their other research projects, and that they think about the dimension of gender much more than before. So they have raised awareness and they think about how gender could influence their actual research now. And this is a huge success for me. The participatory approach for me is important to make research with the people who are actually affected by it. So this is a research principle we are following at IFZ all the time. So we are in favor of doing transdisciplinary and participatory research. And we want to include stakeholders from the very beginning. So even when we are trying to find out what kind of research questions are interesting, we are consulting stakeholders. And stakeholders can be people from policy level to, I don't know, actual users, but those are different stakeholders, are different people from project to project, from research question to research question. The important thing is to include those people who are affected. So this is societal relevant research we're talking about. And technology, in my opinion, is always societal relevant. It has always a dimension connected to society, to environment, sometimes even more focused on there is a human-machine interface. And then it's even more important to think about how can we include the people who are affected by a technology. And you can be affected directly, but also indirectly, and both is very important. For me, gender and diversity are in the first place an analysis point of view. So I start to think about, are there inequalities, inequities? Is there a social justice, injustice dimension of the research question as it is? And then I walk through the whole process and think, can my methodology be enriched by a gender dimension? But it is always, even in projects where I don't have a gender methodological point of view, it is always a kind of philosophical starting point, which comes from feminist STS, so feminist science and technology studies, where I'm coming from. And this is, for instance, that there is no neutral technology, that there is no objective science, that we all have a situated knowledge, and that different knowledges exist, and that we should talk to each other and co-create knowledge together. So this is a philosophical starting point. So this is my lens with which I'm looking at things. And on a more concrete level, when I'm doing, for instance, technology projects like VITAPATCH, there it is the dimension of how can people who have different genders be differently affected by this certain technology. And in the specific case of VITAPATCH, we found out that if we could use the technology for medical purposes, we could use it, for instance, for cardiological rehabilitation. And we invited stakeholders from this very field and found out that there is a huge gap, a huge gender gap in cardiological rehabilitation. So fewer women come into hospital, or fewer women are taken care of because of heart failure, because of a stroke, etc. And in the later phase, when they are coming out of hospital and should be in a rehabilitation center, and later on should put on rehabilitative exercises in their own spare time, in their own home, there are fewer and fewer women. So we are losing more and more women along this way of the rehabilitation cycle. And we know that this cardiological rehabilitation is so important, that people stay healthy after one incident. My personal, it is a very, very important field. I mean, I'm working in this for quite a long time. I do not always call it gendered innovations. So I like to work with the concept of techno-feminism, because I'm a feminist, and I'm quite proud to talk about this. But I know in industrial research and technology research, it's sometimes easier to talk about gender and diversity, and to talk about how different genders and different bodies, as I said, could be influenced differently by a certain technology. And this is very important if we want to have robust technologies, if we want to have accepted technologies and innovations, if we want to have innovations out there which are meeting the actual needs of its actual user. It is important that when we think about gendered innovations, it's not only about that you're not missing one half of the population, but actually when you're not thinking about your actual users, you miss out a lot of men also, because some men are not included also because of their age, because of how their color of the skin looks like, because of their background, because of what they're doing in their spare time, etc. So I think it's important to think about gendered innovations as thinking about the diversity of users who are out there, and design for them. They are our actual users.